Good evening, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. This is IMAX Sports, another football video, and today I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about what just happened. I'm a little late on the video, but I wanted to get to it as soon as possible. So the Colts and the Vikings just played. The Colts were winning 33-0, and they did not win the game at the end of the game. The Vikings won 39-36. This is the second time in Matt Ryan's career that he's broken a record for the biggest blown lead ever. He had the biggest blown lead in a Super Bowl, 28-3 in 2017, and now he has the biggest blown lead in NFL history in any game, regular season, postseason, any game of 33-0. The previous record was a playoff game between the Buffalo Bills and the Houston Oilers, where the Bills came back to win 30. They came back to win from a 35-3 deficit. So that was 32 points. This is 33 points. This was 33-0. In this game, Matt Ryan, I believe, had over 100 passing yards in the first half, and considerably less than that in the second half. He was 19 of 33 for 182 yards and a touchdown. Zach Moss on the ground, previous Buffalo Bills running back, now Colts running back, was the leading rusher for the Colts as Jonathan Taylor went out in the first quarter. Zach Moss had 81 total yards, and Deion Jackson had 55 total yards. So the Colts had 170 on the through the air and 171 on the ground. Not the worst day in the world offensively. Obviously, if you put up 36 points, you're going to have some pretty decent offensive yardage numbers. Obviously, it's not the best in the world, but 340 yards is a pretty solid above average game. Michael Pittman was the leading receiver with 10 catches for 60 yards. And overall, very strong performance from the Colts offense. Most of that was in the first half, obviously. On defense, the Colts had 2 defensive touchdowns. They had a fumble return for a touchdown and a pick six. The interception return for a touchdown was Julian Blackmon, a player I've never heard of until today. And the fumble recovery for a touchdown was, Jojo Doman, another player I've never heard of before. So, big defensive plays for the Colts to gain that lead. Both of those touchdowns were in the first half, obviously. So the Colts scored 17 points in the first quarter, 16 in the second quarter, and then it was all downhill from there. Minnesota took over in the second half. I believe Kirk Cousins had less than 50 yards in the first half. I believe he was sitting somewhere around 34 or something. I think that Justin Jefferson had around 17. In the second half, Kirk Cousins had over 400 yards. He was 34 of 54 in the game for 460 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. One of those interceptions was in the first half, so in the second half, he had over 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a pick. Total passer rating of 99.3 for the game. Obviously, with the 2 interceptions, that brings it down, but 460 yards and 4 touchdowns is not something you see every week. It's something you see maybe once or twice a year. Dalvin Cook had 17 carries for 95 yards, and he also had 4 catches for 95 yards and a touchdown through the air. So Dalvin Cook had a massive game for them. He had 190 scrimmage yards and a touchdown. A lot of that came on a 64-yard reception, which was, I believe, not the game-tying touchdown, but it got them... that was the game-tying touchdown. That was the game-tying touchdown before they had, and then they needed to score a 2-point conversion. So it was 36-34 after that touchdown. Then they got a 2-point conversion to tie the game, and then they got 2 more stops in the Colts. They got 1 more stop, got the ball back. The Colts stopped them. Colts got the ball back, and then they got another stop to go into overtime. On the receiving side of the ball, KJ Osborne, the third-string wide receiver for the Vikings, had a pretty strong game, had a very strong game. He had 10 catches for 157 yards and a touchdown. That's about 32 fantasy points for anyone who was starting him this week. Doubt anyone was, because he really hasn't done much this year. But if anyone was, then they had a fantastic flex wide receiver this week. Justin Jefferson had 12 catches for 123 and a touchdown. Already the best wide receiver in the league for fantasy, just increasing all those numbers. He had 30 fantasy points. Adam Thielen had 3 catches for 41 and a touchdown, and TJ Hawkinson had 3 catches for 33. Nobody else really did anything, but obviously those are their main offensive weapons anyways. They did obviously turn the ball over 3 times, 2 interceptions and a fumble that they lost, but obviously that didn't make a difference in the end. I was getting ready to go on to my power rankings video tomorrow and call the Vikings the worst 10-4 team in NFL history. I was getting ready to say that the Vikings negative 30 whatever point differential being 10-4 was just going to show that they were not going to be able to keep up in the playoffs, that they wouldn't be able to win 4 games in a row, but in order to win a Super Bowl. But Kirk Cousins is showing that he is able to win fourth quarter comebacks. He's had 7 fourth quarter comebacks this season, which is 1 away from the NFL record of 8. Matt Stafford had 8 fourth quarter comebacks and game winning drives. I forgot which year, but it was a season where the Lions weren't having the best year, but obviously his fourth quarter comebacks and game-winning drives were able to bring them into a lot of these games. Kirk Cousins having a very similar season. The Vikings have been losing in a lot of their games, and he has 7 fourth quarter comebacks and game-winning drives. Obviously, that has to do with a bad first-half offense, but in the playoffs, you want a good second-half offense. Better have a good second-half offense than trying to hang on when your offense can't do anything with a slight lead or even a major lead. The Colts fall to 4-9-1. There was a very large chance that they would be one of the first teams in a long time to have 2 ties because the Vikings field goal came down to the last 20 seconds. There's 20 seconds on the clock. They needed to get some yardage to get into field goal range. They got it. The Colts were very close to being 4-8-2, which would have been a bizarre record. But they did end up losing the game, and Minnesota advances to 11-3, further increasing their lead over the 49ers. Not further increasing, but just keeping their lead over the 49ers for that number 2 seed in the NFC. The 49ers are 10-4 with their win over Seattle this week. Vikings are 11-3, so the Vikings are trying to keep the space over the 49ers to try and secure that 2 seed and maybe get the 1 seed if the Eagles blunder. But at this point in the year, the Eagles do have tiebreakers, indefinite tiebreakers, because they beat them earlier in the season. So unless the Eagles lose 3 games in a row, the Vikings will most likely be the 2 seed or the 3 seed, depending on how they finish off their schedule. But I believe their schedule is on the easier side for the rest of the season. The Vikings have the Giants, the Packers, and the Bears left. So the Giants should be a good game at home, but the Vikings should be the favorite for that one. Obviously, they'll be the favorite in the Packers and Bears games, but those are away divisional games, so they could lose either of those 2. I expect them probably to finish 13-4 at this point, but they could obviously finish 14-3, or they could finish 12-5. But any of those should be good enough for the 2 seed or the 3 seed, as I don't think that Tampa is going to be finishing anywhere near Minnesota. Even if the Minnesota loses all 3 of their last games, Tampa still can't pass them because they already have 7 losses. So yeah. The other thing I want to mention is Matt Ryan. This is the second time that Matt Ryan has blown a historic lead in historic fashion. And I just, obviously the defense has something to do with all of these games, but it's impressive how you just can't do anything. Obviously, Matt Ryan is going to be in the conversation for being a Hall of Fame quarterback. And I think that if he doesn't, obviously, I think that not having a Super Bowl ring is going to hurt him. But he has an MVP, he has a few Pro Bowls, and he has some of the best passing stats of all time for yards and touchdowns. Obviously, yards per game, he's top 5 on the list, I believe. But when you look at this game, obviously is towards the end of his career, but having 2 of those games on your record is not a great look for someone who could potentially be a Hall of Fame candidate, especially if one of those is in the only Super Bowl that you make it to. And if Matt Ryan were to have held on to the lead in that in the 28-3 game, then obviously I think that he would probably be a Hall of Famer if he did win the Super Bowl against Tom Brady. Has that MVP, has that Super Bowl, only player to win MVP and Super Bowls in the same year in 20 years, but he wasn't able to do it, and they still weren't able to win. So yeah, not the most well edited or pictural video you'll ever see, but yeah, I just kind of wanted to recap this game because it was fascinating, and the Vikings have officially clinched the NFC North. They cannot lose the division now, so they're officially in the playoffs. And the Colts are officially knocked out of the playoffs. So obviously both of those, we already knew that ahead of time, but now it's official. The Vikings are officially winning the division. Colts are officially out. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a like if you did enjoy the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace. Huge shout out to Quinn Lacey for supporting the channel with a channel membership.